So we've got a quorum.
We are live on YouTube.
Good.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Planning and Parks Committee meeting for today, Monday, August 19th. I almost said Tuesday. Wish it was Tuesday instead of Monday, but 2024. Thank you all for being here. And we will start off by doing a roll call.
Chair Galani,
Here.
Councilmember Preston,
Here.
Councilmember Krantz,
Here.
Councilmember Ottenberg, Councilmember Rambo,
Here.
Councilmember Mabry,
Here.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Here.
and
She's
Councilmember
up
Dodwell.
there.
Here. And we have quorum.
Awesome. Did you get Councilmember McCutcheon?
Yeah, you couldn't hear, but.
Yeah, okay. All right. All right, so we'll move, first, we'll go to approval of the minutes from the committee's meeting from Monday, July 22nd, 2024. Do I have a motion? Motion by Councilmember Preston, second by Councilmember Mabry. Any discussion on the motion? No further discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, minutes are approved.
Thank you.
Okay, and next we've got public participation. Do we have anybody? There's nobody here in the room that I see. Is there anybody online?
If anybody on Zoom wishes to speak during public participation, please raise your hand and you'll be promoted to a panelist. Does not look like it. Thank
Oh,
you.
good, okay. That takes us right into action items. And tonight we've got under planning matters, we have 3 items ready for consideration. The first one being landscaping and plantings guide, the revised approach to the completion. And Director Vunich, take it away.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the committee, before I begin my formal presentation of the memorandum, I do want to again extend my thanks to Council members Clark, former Council member Clark, and Council members Dodwell and Rambo for participating in the subcommittee that was formed back about this time last year to assist the consultant with the development of the new plantings, landscaping and plantings guide. I will just give a bit of background in that. After the city council had endorsed the engagement of a consultant to assist in this process, in fact, it was multiple consultants, each having a bit of a separate role. The primary consultant was a firm, our landscape architectural firm, that would do the lion's share of the research, development, writing, and then presentation. Then we had an arborist, a gentleman that's worked with the city in the past that would assist us in developing the tree components that are key in our tree manual now, the tree stand delineation, the tree preservation plan, and then the techniques and steps in ensuring that those tree preservation plans are implemented in appropriate fashion. And we actually save the trees we intend to save. And then finally, kind of tying it all together was a graphic designer, company that we use for our wildwood history book and other projects over the course of time. So we had a very good kind of point of reference with her due to her past experience with the city and the projects she completed. I think we got off to about as best a start as we could. We met with the consultant, primary consultant, and the other 2 as well. And for the most part, with the first couple of meetings, we're just talking about where we wanted to go, how we wanted to change the tree manual to make it a more effective tool, not only for the development community, but our property owners, residents, commercial and institutional users as well. For the most part, the tree manual seemed to have focused on our residential communities and the development of them over the course of the past 20+ years. We thought we had a clear message from the subcommittee and city team members. And as we move forward, we just seemed to struggle to get to a point where we had a tangible document in front of us that was something that could be reviewed by the subcommittee from this committee and team members. It got to a point that we received a product from them, not complete. It was just the residential component minus even the front end material, which would have been a table of contents and introduction, things along those lines. And then everything else that would follow, the commercial, institutional, all the resources that we wanted, et cetera, et cetera. So we paused, and we've not been back with that consultant since that pause. That's unfortunate, and certainly I'm sure there's a lot of reasons, and fortunately, probably some of those reasons relate to poor leadership on my part in many ways. But I thought we had a successful formula, but again, we're kind of at a pause. So tonight, based upon some conversations with the members of the subcommittee and internal conversations amongst ourselves at the Department of Planning and Parks, along with now having our own on-staff arborist, the department would like to kind of restart the process, but in a different direction. So first and foremost, we want to retain the graphic designer. We feel very strongly she'll bring a lot of value to the process as we close out the development of the new manual. Again, if you want to see the type of work and the creativity of that individual, just look at our Wildwood history book that we published at the last year's Wildwood celebration. Excuse me. And I think it's been well received and a nice organized document that appeals to many people. We also obviously now want to loop in Mike Walsh, our city arborist, much more than when we had previously. Now that he's kind of got his feet on the ground, got most of the ash tree issues resolved, and now for the most part, I think he has a little time to spare in this effort. The next step is from the department's perspective, we need to categorize all the information. And Travis Newberry has started this that we have available. And the consultant's effort, the main consultant's effort, was not a complete wash. There are some things that we feel we can use. Most of those things were developed by the subcommittee and team members on what we call the Miro board. A lot of those didn't transfer into the first draft, but there's good information there. Ms. Clark did an extensive glossary of terms that is really, really excellent. There's been some other efforts in terms of just commercial standards, residential standards, and then our arborist that was on as a consultant, he provided a great list of organizations that provide resources, information, tips, and things like that. And again, the intent was to make this document slimmer, more concise, and base it on a web-based format so that people could go to the web, find what they want, get that information, and move on. And that way too, we could always keep it constantly updated so the information wouldn't go stale. So we're in process of kind of categorizing all the work products. The next step, I think, is for the remaining members of the subcommittee and Ms. Clark, if she's willing, to kind of get back together and then start that draft outline. Here's the 10 things we're going to do and can get consensus on that draft outline. And I think key component on that is just making sure we haven't missed an important component. And then start that drafting. And again, I think we have a lot of good components. So I don't see that as an ominous task. It certainly is a task, but I don't see it as being something that we collectively can't do and complete. Thereafter, once we have that draft, the process kind of just, we start getting review comments, we start refining, and we keep moving in that direction. So we have a final draft that ultimately will come back to this committee for its review, its endorsement, and then to City Council. Nothing really out of the ordinary in the 10 steps. It's a standard process that's worked for many of our planning documents in the past. The only really key component of it is we're going to have to take the information we have, reformat it, and then from the perspective of the department, at least through this memorandum, use the expertise that we have on staff and with our subcommittee to complete it. And so tonight, the department is requesting your opinion on the process, the 10 steps, and if it's satisfactory. and an endorsement to proceed forward so that we can get back at it and hopefully sometime before the end of the year or right at the start of next year, have a document that you all can look at and say, yeah, it worked out well.
Okay. Councilmember Rambo, thank you, Director Vunish.
I once washed all my work clothes in laundry with a bright red t-shirt and wound up everything pink for 6 months. And I give props to any guy who's confident enough to wear a pink shirt. Cause I had no, I had no choice. Did you have any public comment? Did you just came in to watch? Okay, good. Yeah. So Ms. Clark has a very comprehensive, as she is wont to do, 8-page outline as you referenced, and she is happy. I spoke to her today about a variety of things, and she's happy to participate further. I strongly suggest we have a couple of in-person coordination meetings, because we can get a lot done as long as we have someone capturing that and moving forward with it that's not using the mirror board. And so I guess we can have as much discussion as is necessary, but I would make the motion now or at the appropriate time to take the department's recommendations and make this a priority and try to crash it to home.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got a motion on the floor to proceed, second by Councilmember Dodwell. Now we're in discussion of said motion. Councilmember Krantz?
This is all gonna be on the website, right?
Yes,
There's not gonna be any printed document.
if someone would want a printed document, we could certainly merge the components of the, I think they called it the web framework. Just a bit of I'll give you a little bit of background.
All right.
One of the tasks that was assigned to Melanie and Travis was to create the framework for the web's page or the web section. They did a wonderful job, and we had a short meeting or a meeting with the subcommittee and us, and Melanie and Travis went through it in a pretty thorough fashion. And it was well received and logical. So yes, it is to be a web-based document more so than anything.
If they want a copy, they could just print it off, right?
Yeah.
They can print off specific pages.
As long as we don't have a extra cost for some sort of a manual, I wouldn't want it bad. But anyway, okay, well, thanks.
Anybody else? Councilmember Dodwell?
We set it up through this process with an introduction session, the goals of the document for all of the party types that were available, that would be using this document. And then we had a section for, say, new homeowners. What do you need to plant in your yard? What's a good thing to plant? What's a bad thing to plant? What resources do you have here locally within Wildwood that you can go after to go get plants, to get guidance, to get assistance? And what resources do you have in the area, like the botanical garden, et cetera? Then we have another section that we've already got a tree manual and our guidelines for development work for landscaping that the city follows. So how do we incorporate that as part of the document? And then, as Mr. Vunish said, Teresa Clark had done an amazing job of just finding definitions for all sorts of terms in landscaping and gardening, et cetera. So there'll be that available as well. And then additional resources. And we put all that out on this Miro board and thought we were moving along pretty quickly. So I'm really glad that we've got it back under our control. Melanie and Travis did a great job of starting with a good framework that is within the same design as our current website to some extent. So if a user's used to coming and checking our minutes or grabbing information about this, that, or the other thing from the city, then they'll be able to dive in and get specifics on planting guide. And so will a developer, so that they don't have to fish around so much. So I think we'll be able to move along very quickly. I was very pleased and proud of Melanie and Travis for them to be able to just stuff into the web tool and get us going a little bit more quickly. So I look forward to being able to get this done before the end of the year. That's a good goal.
Awesome. Good. Yeah, it sounds like a great program and definitely something that needs to be done and needs to be done expeditiously. So they can be helpful for everybody involved. Does anybody else have any questions, comments, concerns, discussion? All right, seeing none, we've got a motion and a second on the floor to allow the department to proceed with engaging in the further discussion and crafting of this document. Yep.
Just one last thing, there is no objection on the part of the committee members to have Ms. Clark kind of retain her role as part of the subcommittee, but obviously not on city council.
I can't
It's
imagine anybody would
resident
have an
input.
objection, but if anybody does, say, speak now or forever hold your peace.
I asked Ms. Clark before I checked with the subcommittee, and then the subcommittee they were very much in favor, so I just wanted to cover that last base.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Everyone that knows her knows she would be a
Otherwise-
valued
otherwise we
asset to
have
the
to
team.
work,
Yeah. Thank you, Teresa. See, she's online over there, so very much appreciated, and I know she always brings tremendous value to the process, so. Without any further discussion, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
I,
Aye.
Any abstentions? All right,
Thank you.
best of luck in getting that done. Next, we've got, under planning matters, we've got stormwater management master plan and the consultant process, and Director Vunich.
Again, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the committee, as you know, we've had a watershed erosion task force working very hard to solve a lot of really difficult and expensive problems within at least a couple of our watersheds. And the 7 others that exist in the city of Wildwood haven't received a level of attention deserving of them. The 2 watersheds we have focused on generally have been caught in the bottom. And those are the areas where we have the highest level of development and where, for the most part, we see the greatest threat to public and private properties. And so there's a logic to the process, but as we move forward, identifying problems or critical locations, looking for solutions such as retrofitting old retention basins, making repairs, undertaking a joint study with the United States Geological Survey. Consistent theme that's come back, the Watershed Erosion Task Force and to this committee and city council is we have no funding, and without funding, these solutions are hard to implement. And the question was, why don't we have funding? Well, I can name a governor of the state of Missouri that has basically vetoed funding for us 2 consecutive years, but primarily what we found is that it's a very competitive area, and those entities, cities, counties, et cetera, that have been successful generally have a stormwater management master plan. And it's modeled after an Environmental Protection Agency template, and funding of the nature we need in the millions of dollars generally only comes from the federal government. So the insights we receive were, you need this plan, and you need a plan that identifies this process for grant application with these key agencies that do this type of work. So with that in mind, the Watershed Erosion Task Force undertook the creation of a request for qualifications. The request for qualifications was concluded just after the start of 2024. In March of 2024, the Watershed Erosion Task Force held 4 interviews with 4 of the 6 firms that responded to the RFQ. Of those 4 firms, all did wonderful presentations, but ultimately 2 rose above the others, and those 2 were HR Green and M3 Engineering. And unfortunately, the Watershed Erosion Task Force and team members that participated in the interviews, like Tom Lee, our city administrator, Ms. Ripple, myself, along with Rick Brown and several others, we couldn't come to just one was better than the other. Each had their own strengths. Each knew parts of the community a little better than the other. So a decision was made to do a partnership. And the partnership will accomplish several things. First, having two firms working on it speeds up the development of the master plan in some regards. And that was key amongst many of the interviewees' responses to how long does this take? One firm said just on their own, possibly up to 2+ years. And that's a long time to wait for solving many of our more pressing problems. Additionally, we're 68 square miles in size. We have 14,000+ properties, 9 watersheds, and an EPA 9-point template actually requires you to go beyond your boundaries, capture all of the watersheds. For example, in Cox Creek, that means portions of Clarkson Valley. We have to contact them, get information relative to their situation and others. So partnerships seem like a logical approach. So this past week, we met with the two firms, and Mr. Newberry prepared this memorandum, particularly the areas where he went through the 8 points that are identified. And these are the questions we presented to them. Are you willing to participate in a partnership like this and split the project in two? And it was a resounding yes. All of them said, two firms, I should say, all had worked together before, not necessarily on this type of project, but all had worked together and felt that this would not be an issue for them. We talked about making sure that they addressed all the components, the tasks that were identified in the RFQ, working with all the information we've developed, whether it's the USGS study, the work that had been done by Dr. David Hammer, intuitional logic, et cetera. They all said, yes, that's obvious. We'll use the resources we have at hand and save as much time and money in basically the research that's required as part of this plan. We hammered this home multiple times, multiple people. The outcome of this process, this management plan, has to be able to identify grants and obtain funding for the city to proceed forward. Both firms have strong records in terms of identifying grant opportunities and obtaining those grant opportunities for their clients. And so that was a real positive. And then again, we talked about and hammered home again that our goal is to have an EPA 9-point plan template complete so that when we do apply to the federal agencies and state government, we can meet that requirement and meet it. Timeframes, still even with the two of them, they said this project could extend anywhere from 12 to 18 to 24 months. There's a monitoring component associated with the EPA template, and that monitoring means you're taking measurements out in the field, and the measurements have to be over a certain period of time. The good news is, and this came from one of the sub-consultants to the two main consultants, is that while we're doing that, doesn't mean we can't apply for grants based upon the information we've garnered to that point. So they're already looking ahead at what can we apply for while we do this long-term master planning process. We talked about dividing the city into two areas, basically north-south. North flows to the Missouri River, south flows to the Merrimack. They were fine with that delineation. Public engagement will be a key component. And for the most part, what we told them is we did a lot of public engagement early on, at first probably 10 to 12 months. Not so much as we moved into identifying critical locations, the retrofits of the basins, the USGS study. So make a long story short, they have expertise on the teams to do a good public engagement effort. And what we hope to do is to expand what we've done previously and get all of these stormwater problems identified, get them on a comprehensive list, and begin that prioritization that is necessary. And then finally, we wanted to ensure that the two partners could basically create a document that seemed like it was done by one. And they said, yes, there'll be editors or an editor of a single origin. And that was also the case with the public input, as I recall. Basically, they're going to use the same sub-consultant instead of two different ones. So the message will be consistent as it comes from both teams and the city. So tonight, there really is no action. We hope to have the proposal sometime in the middle to late part of September. They felt they needed that much time to kind of coordinate all the different components. And then once that proposal is back, it'll work its way through Watershed Erosion Task Force to committee and then to city council. Tonight is being presented to you basically as an information item, but certainly if you have any thoughts, comments, or suggestions, Ms. Rippetoe and I would love to hear them at this time. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Director Vunich. Does anybody have? Councilmember Rambo?
Yeah, several of the 13 study areas listed in your document apply to the following point, but I'll focus on number 12, review and evaluate local stormwater requirements, codes and regulations. I sort of backed out of participation of the WETF because it looked like it was gonna be years before anything would happen with Fox Creek. And I got tired of talking about $250,000 to fix one guy's backyard when there were other, larger problems to solve. And so, but what I have come to fairly recently, is there are folks out there doing what they think is the right thing to shore up, stabilize the banks of their creek, but they're not thinking about downstream. So we get chunks of asphalt washing downstream. We get, old lawnmowers and dishwashers and that kind of thing because they were, quote, holding the bank. And it's just, the hillbilly method of stream bank retention, which does not work. But people are willing to do the right thing, I think, at least in some instances, if we can tell them how to do it. And, but we don't have any accessible means for them to figure out if they're on a DNR blue line, or if they're if they're in a FEMA floodplain, or if there's any other overarching regulatory body other than Wildwood that they need to take into account. Because if you get crossways with the feds doing work in a creek or something like that, you could be in serious trouble. And so we owe it to the citizens to be able to find that kind of information easily and quickly. And I have a feeling that if we said, here's a picture of what you don't do, and it's got the old tires and stuff, and here's a picture of what you do, and it's the bank is leaned back and you're stuck in some cuttings of willows or something like that, and you're stabilizing the bank, and it's relatively inexpensive and so on and so forth. And if we could provide something like that quickly, it might help us with future grant applications, because they like to see that you're trying to take the bull by the horns and you're doing inexpensive things to help yourself, but you just need you need federal resources to do the big projects. And so I would strongly suggest that they take a little bit of time just looking at what they can do to actually say, here are guidelines, here's the ordinances that we should have in place to prevent that kind of dumping and so forth, because it happens a lot. And we don't penalize people for dumping in a bunch of riprap, even though it's gonna wash downstream. And in the meantime, it causes an eddy current downstream that scours out the bank and it cuts further. So not only is it a passively bad idea, it's actually the wrong thing to do in terms of stopping erosion. And so I rambled a little bit there, but my point is, Joe, if you think it's appropriate to task them with that, we could have just a resource on our city website that says, just like we have we used to have a great GIS, now we have an okay GIS that says, here's your parcel. We could have the same thing saying, here is where the DNR responsibility ends, and your property is upstream of it, so you don't have as much concern. And oh, by the way, if you do the wrong thing, the penalties are this and that and the other thing. Does that make any sense to you?
Ms. Dodwell wants to, I can respond.
Why don't you respond to Councilmember Rambo, and then we'll have,
Okay, I was just gonna add.
if you have something to add to him?
I just was gonna add in, we need a simple 1 to 2 page document for our standard residents that are backed up to creeks, here's what you should do, here's what you shouldn't do.
Don't throw stuff in the creek and,
Yeah, that's all. I
Simple,
wanted to
yeah,
make
simple.
comment.
What can they do though? What can you do?
That's what I'm saying.
You
They
know?
don't know what they can or can't do in a lot of
We don't know.
cases.
yeah, I can respond to what they ought to do, but we don't, our in general, our ordinances have no teeth in them. And if somebody, a lot of times people would prefer to pay $100 fine every 6 months than spend $10,000 to do the right thing, right? And so we need to clean that up, and that was certainly implied, if not expressly stated, in what I was asking you to have these consultants.
Go ahead.
Well, I'll try to respond as best I can to the list of items that you've identified. Gustavo has added to. First and foremost, I will defend the Watershed Erosion Task Force. About a year or year and a half into their meeting schedule, they created a short list of do's and don'ts. And we had that out at the garden event, that March event that was provided by the city. We had the water table and we had all this information there. We basically had it out at the Celebrate Wildwood event. We circulated as best we can, but for the most part, we asked our experts to basically say, what are the simple do's? Here's things you can do. Here's the things you shouldn't do. It's not as precise as don't dump riprap in a columnar fashion against a sheer cliff, because it doesn't work. We know that. But we can do better. We can do better. And one of the things that's underway right now at the lead, under the lead of Tom Lee, has been that he's engaged Mike Walsh and Gina Tart, our new communications manager, economic development manager, and they've created this Willow sheet, basically Willow sprouts, how to put them in, what the best approach is, and that's ready to be published on our website. So if people need to do temporary stabilization, we have our arborist that's weighed in, and we're going to promote it in a fashion that, from a communication standpoint, I can't do, and it looks great.
It needs to be, there needs to be a button to it on the homepage.
Okay, I'll pass that on.
And a way to find out if you're in floodplain or there's any other special considerations. I think that's really important.
So the good news there too is between Melanie, who's went from, I'm like, okay, I think I know this, to doing just excellent GIS maps, and now Destin, our new employee in Public Works that has a specialty in GIS. I think we can do that. I think we can create something like that. And we have two people that I think have the skills to basically make it something very special. So we'll take that under advisement. In terms of penalties, so I'll give you an example. The state's at Deer Hollow off of Route 100 by Hawks Rest. I was called out there by the three trustees. This was a few years ago. Their road borders a portion of Fox Creek. They had an erosion problem that was slowly but surely inching toward the edge of their asphalt pavement. They engaged a local contractor to come out and basically repair that slope. The reason I was called out there is we held the escrow money from the developer that had defaulted, and they wanted the city to compensate that work. Well, we ended up doing it because it was work we would have compensated. But by the time I got out there and met with them, there had been a big storm and the riprap was gone. It was just a sheer dirt.
I'm familiar with it. I walked in that creek occasionally. It's actually Deer Creek.
So from my perspective, I explained to him, you shouldn't do that again. And here's what you need to do in the future. But sometimes when I go out and meet with people and they spend tens of thousands of dollars on a repair that they think is going to work, or the contractor told them they would be successful with, me telling them I'm gonna write them a violation notice is probably the last thing the city needs to do. So I'll accept full responsibility for basically saying, I'm not gonna write you a ticket, but don't do it anymore. And most of them say, yeah, I'm not gonna waste my money.
But meanwhile, the stuff has washed down the creek, and that's my complaint, right?
So here's my problem. How do I engage 10 property owners downstream, 2 property owners downstream, and say, let this person come get it? Well, that's not going to be that person picking it up by hand. It's going to have to be equipment.
Right.
So it just becomes a very complex issue. And then we get involved because if they have equipment in the creek, are they gonna do more damage than repair? So what we need to do is have clear and concise recommendations that people can follow that ultimately avoid that happening. We can't avoid it completely with storms that are off the scale, so to speak, those 200-year, 500-year storms. We're going to get things to move in the creek regardless. We do everything right. But like I say, I struggle with this every day. Travis and I were out last week. Gentleman spent $16,000. It made it through 3 storms and the gully's back and it's worse than ever. And it's like,
Because those rocks hit us.
Yes, so I have lots of comments, but this will take us off track. I want to make 2 points. I'm a fan of the WETF. They work hard and they do pretty good work. And I'm also aware that my wishes for the GIS system are the old way where you could look up absolutely every little factoid about that property now and forever. And I know that we're working back toward that, but I didn't mean to be offensive to you, Melanie. You have done great work and it's much better than it was already and it's getting better every day. So, but I'm one of the few people that probably uses it a lot.
well, I took no offense at your comments because we did stumble for a while. When Terry Gaston left, we struggled to find a solution. And for the most part, the GIS was kind of best we could do, best we could find, best we could offer, but it wasn't good. And I'll admit that. But I agree with Ms. Dodwell. I think ultimately our do's and don'ts needs to be something just very concise, but give a little bit more detail than the postcard size do's and don'ts that we published. That was an idea of the task force. I think it's a good idea, but I think people now, given what we're seeing, particularly after the 2 storms we had in May, that May, June, July timeframe, just people are really aware of it now.
If there's no carrot and no stick, a lot of people are just gonna keep chucking the laundry, the old washing machines in them.
It's just,
The way it is.
Well, if you put something up there that they can go to easily, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting. I didn't even.
Yeah, we're way off, kind of off.
Finish up,
track
and then I
here.
got
Sorry.
Councilmember McCutcheon, but go ahead and finish your, because you were part of this original question.
Use those topics from the postcard, but then they can click on that recommendation and deep dive into more details. You don't have
Yeah,
to
bullets where
reinvent
you-
how you have it laid out. Just take that postcard, throw it up on the website and say,
Further,
here's how you get more details.
Councilmember McCutcheon.
Yeah, Joe, I hope you remember the presenter's name because I don't. But we had a very knowledgeable lady who came to speak to the Watershed Task Force when it was first developed. And she had some pictures of do's and don'ts. And she had quite a narrative. I don't remember where she was from, but if you do, I mean, that would, help our labor intensive time because she's already got it done.
Ms. McCutcheon, it's funny you should say that because the do's and don'ts that were developed by the department kind of came from her list, so to speak. Because I remember
Her name either. I'm trying to think of it.
It's like 3+ years ago.
Lasting
so it's
impression.
beyond- But yes, thank you for the suggestion. And I like the idea that, you have a short introductory statement, click on it, then it gives you some recommendations and then the resources to follow. One of the things that we've talked about very briefly at Watershed Erosion Task Force, it's just a list of engineering firms and qualified contractors. Just people we know that understand the wildwood environment and know how to work within these delicate and sensitive creek areas. I'm sure there's a lot of legal issues associated with that.
That's why we have.
Why wasn't I on the list? Well, And it's a matter of just qualifying for it. And maybe that, you know, that, but we haven't gotten very far on that, but I think that would help. If you know somebody that knows how to do it, instead of just taking the word of a contractor that says they've done it. I think that could go a long way to solving some of the problems, not all. But
Great. Anybody else? Councilmember France?
Are you 100% satisfied with two consultants?
in this case, yes, because I think the two consultants, at the time they put their heads together, this is gonna be a very expensive plan.
They're not gonna be bumping heads or anything, are they?
No, and Rick knows both of them much better than I, Rick Brown. And I've worked with both of them individually. They're just quality firms. And I think they set me at ease when we met last week. I can't speak for Melanie, but
Unquestionably, and they seem to have a lot of very, very qualified people on their.
And you're
specific
splitting the
teams.
work up, is what you're doing? Okay. And it's the same budget and everything?
yes, it'll be a
Okay.
single budget line item.
Okay.
But, and again, the logic is basically Old Manchester Road is the divide between the Missouri River watershed and the Merrimack River watershed. And so when rain falls on one side, it goes to the opposite direction of the other. So the idea is break it there instead of trying to do it elsewhere.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, seeing no further discussion, there's no action required by the committee. Oh, or maybe, I'm sorry.
Question. As far as Councilmember Franz, I was trying to hold it against what I think the concern is. Are there any watersheds of the 9 or 11 that interbreed with the other watershed, either Missouri or Merrimack? I know that bottom literally starts at Highway 100, but it starts 12 feet south of 100.
Yeah, yeah.
And are there any others that do that?
So simplistically, for the purposes of our discussion last week with the two consultants, I used Old Manchester Road. That makes sense. But actually, the line will probably just do exactly what you said. It may dip a little lower than Old Manchester Road to get the headwaters of the creek. And it may be a little jagged looking, but all in all, if a raindrop falls here, it goes that way. If a raindrop falls there, it goes this way.
All right, well, thank you very much for the presentation and the discussion, everybody, and we look forward to seeing that updated do's and don'ts on the website. All right, that takes us into the recent development trends within the city. Does anybody have any questions, concerns, or comments related to that? All right, seeing none, that is the end of planning matters. And now we go into park matters. We've got 6 items for consideration. The first being the Village Green, Phase 1A and 2, the playground area. And we've got Director Vuch.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I'm going to kind of work in numerical order backwards. So Phase 2, as you know, is the new all-inclusive playground that's been discussed at this committee for several months now. The good news is I expect to have the new design available for our September meeting. Ms. McKay, Mr. Nielsen, and others will be here to present basically their image or refined image of the Village Green facility. The committee and the city council, based upon the recommendations of the committee, have made several steps in this direction, and those steps are summarized in the memorandum prepared by the department. And it's really probably not another phase, but I just thought it was an appropriate way to identify the next item, and that's Phase 1A. And the thought came to some of us at the Department of Planning and Parks about the performance oval, or the civic green as it's called in the master plan. And within the last few months, this committee endorsed the switch out or the new light standards that'll form define the interior area, or excuse me, the exterior of the oval. And those standards, I really appreciate the fact that the committee endorsed them. I think there'll be something very unique, provide a nice level of lighting, and really kind of set a very nice character for it. Over the last couple of years, though, when we've done Celebrate Wildwood, we've strung the aesthetic lighting or bistro lighting across Main Street. So from one side of Main Street, the north side, to the south side. It's been well received for some of our special events. And so the thought was, while we're still at that stage in the project, should we consider some type of aesthetic lighting in conjunction with just our standard lighting system? And so what the department has done is created 3 options, probably 2.5 options. The first is we could string bistro lighting or the aesthetic lighting around the perimeter and basically supplement that for special events. It wouldn't be on all the time. My thought was is when we have concerts, when we have Celebrate Wildwood, when we have just general performances, farmers market, things like that. You know, if there is like nighttime type of thing. The other would be to just do the interior. So have your exterior light standards, which are shown here. And then just string them in the interior of the Civic Green. And another would be, if we do the interior, would you want them to cross the oval and create a certain effect? In this instance, we think we could actually string them between the light standards. We're not 100% sure. In this instance, what we talked about in the memorandum, meaning the human nature, the landscape consultant that did the master plan, CDI, the engineer of record for phase 1 of Village Green, and the city team members, is actually do sleeves. So you would install sleeves here with caps, and then you'd have poles that you would install for the events and then string the lights, instead of having a permanent structure there all the time with nothing attached to it.
So the poles wouldn't go up until you place them there for the event and they take them down?
Exactly. So tonight, the first question is, do you think it's something we want to explore before they get too far along in the development of the civic? Or is it something that you don't want to explore, and then we'll conclude the presentation and move on to the next one?
Yeah, Councilman Rambo?
Yeah, I actually love the idea. The concerns I would have would be making sure the cross strings are high enough that they're unobtrusive, because they can look more like starlight. It can look really cool. I don't think we need to string it around the outer. This is my personal opinion, but I do like the interior ones. And if it's LEDs, it should be A, cheap, and B, lightweight. And so I like the pole idea, because we can have, I don't know what those poles would cost, but I think it makes a lot more sense than do the sockets. If we did the sockets, then we can defer some costs, but maybe just, it doesn't have to be a socket where the poles are removable. We just buy poles when we've got the money and count on leaving the poles, because it seems like a lot of extra work, and things banging around will be ruining pavement and stuff. It's, you know, it just doesn't seem to make
Getting
sense to
loose.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so I would advocate for poles, providing it's relatively inexpensive, and I would advocate for the pattern, the cross pattern first, the inner oval would be choice 1A, you know, kind of together, and then the outer one, I don't think we need it. That's my opinion.
Councilman Dodwell?
I like the cross ones too, but I don't want permanent stuff sticking up out of the ground. The whole idea of that whole space was supposed to be an open place where, when we didn't have concerts going on or we didn't have events going on, people could just come and lay down in the grass and read a book, or people could walk around as a break time for work, that kind of stuff. So I don't really want to see poles stuck across that beautiful greenscape.
No, it's not going
No, it's on
across.
the
The
end.
poles are gonna be at the end and then you string the light the entire way.
Oh, okay.
And then it's just
Okay,
like
that's why I was, that's where that's where I wanted to.
Councilmember Preston? Yeah.
Is there any express, are we looking to put in any sort of guidelines here? I mean, are people going to be allowed to be playing in this area with like a football or a frisbee or something like that during the day, or? What's the, is there an intent here to make this not like that, more of like a relaxation family place, or is it gonna be a play zone?
Well, that's a very good question, and you've developed the approach that I necessarily didn't think of or explain to anyone else. From the department's perspective, we were thinking, again, we'd use sleeves and install the poles for the events. Therefore, when the event's over, we just take out, we basically remove the poles, lay down the lights, roll them up, and then store them. But yeah, regardless, if we want to have somebody throw a frisbee or play catch with a football or whatever the situation might be, if we leave them in permanently, then yeah.
I mean, I think we have to do the polls if we're gonna consider doing I love the idea too, the crossways. I think that'll make that such a neat space, especially around like celebratory events but they have to be able to come down. Otherwise, I think we're gonna short space the usage of the space.
Yeah.
Short foot?
We're
So-
gonna, not utilize the space.
Director Vunich, to Councilman Rambo's point, if you did the ones across, would we look at doing across and the inner ring? Or are you saying we gotta pick one of the three?
We can do combinations. The only one I didn't is if we did the outer ring and wanted to string it across, we'd have it going over the oval, and I just didn't think that would.
That's the walkway.
Yeah.
So the idea would be is if you wanted to do the inner ring, fine, we could do this, or we can just do pull and pull, pull and pull and pull and pull. We don't have to do the inner ring. We could just do the crossing as well.
I mean, I like the idea, Councilman Rambo, about doing the inner ring and the cross. But I guess if you did pull, really, you would have poles traversing both sides of the ellipse, right? And then you would really only need to put one at each end to cover that, to go around. Like you wouldn't need to, you know what I'm saying? Like we could do a cross, right? So if you had a pole at each point
Why
on
don't you
the
go
end
up
of the
there and tell
cross.
us what you're talking about?
Oh, so are these spaces here?
That was just to
Or is-
show, that was just.
Yeah, so
kinda
if you had
show
a
the lighting.
pull, then you could add one here
Oh,
and
certainly.
then go from here to here and here to here, right?
And close the.
So really, you're only adding
Closing
one
the end,
pole
yeah.
on each end.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be round, is what
Yeah,
you're
it
saying.
doesn't have to be
right?
perfectly round because it's dark.
That would cover all the dark spots though.
Yeah, but then you basically got the across and you're accomplishing this, circumference while you're going across at the same time, you're covering both options, which only adding 2 extra poles and a small amount of lights.
But what about the sag in the middle? The poles would have to be really long.
Well, my thought is, and again, if this is acceptable, I'll ask the landscape architect with Human Nature and CDI. I think we're gonna have to have some type of temporary sleeve in here.
Yes.
Just to provide that support.
Well, or the two, Mr. Chair's poles can be taller and there could be a cable, just a regular cable between those two. And you could hang that as part of your effort.
Oh, across
And
the
then,
middle.
yeah, and then
That's
that
smart,
could,
yeah.
it could be like a peak, like a house.
Yeah.
That could look even cooler.
Yeah,
And the sags would be a feature instead of a problem in the center.
it's almost like a circus tent.
Yeah, exactly exactly. Right.
Can certainly, again, if this is an acceptable idea, I'll pass that on.
Run it past a lighting engineer.
Yeah, thanks, that's fine.
So we have-
Councilmember Mabry?
Just opinion that I'm more focused on the construction, installation and service. The aesthetics will work themselves out because we're all bright people, we think. But I thought of an empty flagpole. Nothing's uglier on earth than an empty flagpole. It insults the purpose of what the pole is there for when it's not being used. And it insults the flagpole, have nothing to do. I've seen pretty impressive fake trees used as cell towers. They look like conifers, they look really smart. And taking these stanchions out with the sleeves invites about 6 different kinds of damage and cost and labor to both warehouse them, haul them, install them. So I'm pretty sure we're all aware of those aspects of it. So that's what really had me flinching. The color of those fake fiberglass plastic trees, if that's the case used. I am pointed a lot more toward a permanent fixture that looks like something that belongs there, even when it's not being used to string lights.
But you've got the stage,
Sorry,
you've got the stage
the stage.
on the
right.
eastern side for concerts. And there's trees.
Oh, no, I don't see any pink circles or red circle. I think the circles are the poles, aren't they? And the bars are the lights.
These were just, yeah, the pole and then a string of lights
Yeah.
between pole.
I didn't see any
The
pink
stage
or
area.
red circles toward the stage area. And if that's really if the concerts are found to be impingent sightlines, then just open up that last right-hand arc so that area of it's got longer arc toothpick poles.
To make this simple,
Yeah. Councilmember.
maybe you should just price, because I agree with your assessment of an empty flagpole. I do not necessarily agree that these poles have to look like empty flagpoles. They could be columns of some sort. They could have a design. I'm not sure plastic trees are a wildwood aesthetic that would fly with the
Probably
with the
pulls
normal
off a lot of people.
people. Right. But depending on how sturdy the poles have to be, formed steel that's painted could look really nice. But I was gonna suggest, count up what it takes to put a pole at each end of the crossing strings and Mr. Galani's 2 poles at the end and see what the cost per pole might be and come back and say, this is gonna cost $500,000. And then we say, let's punt it to phase 2. Right?
Yeah.
And if you say that it's gonna cost $100,000, we say this is worth it because I think it's worth
That's a
it.
good.
That's my opinion.
That's a good.
Yeah, Councilmember Kranz?
I think this lighting is very important. I'd like to see an illustration, get several pictures, what it would look like, so. Cause I can't visualize what you guys are seeing, and I think it's important we get it right.
Sure.
too. And
Doesn't need to make.
I mean,
much
these
difference
ideas are
for
great.
phase 1.
I'm trying to minimize the effort from the department because they have a couple of other things on the plate.
But then everybody could see it.
Yep.
Yeah, that's fine.
I mean, I like that circus tent thing.
I think that's a nice-
Councilmember McCutcheon?
As far as the polls go, I don't see any point in us putting them in and taking them out. I think that's gonna be a lot of work for the staff when we're not using them, if we're not using them. For lights, we could put some kind of, flags up about Wildwood on them so that they don't look like telephone poles.
Yeah, banners.
And the red line around the oval, is there a sidewalk there?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
So are the lights gonna light the sidewalk, or is the sidewalk with this idea gonna be dark?
McCutcheon, the original light standards that were shown as part of phase 1 will provide illumination all across both the concrete and then this other walk. So this will be lit. This will provide some additional lighting, not a great amount, because again, we're talking about aesthetic lighting. Key component though is with the new light standards, this area in the center was kind of dark. So when we do use aesthetic lighting, it'll provide some illumination in the center.
Thank you.
You're
Yeah,
welcome.
I like the idea of potentially putting banners or flags or
All right.
That is a good idea.
potentially moving the you know, using the
Banners.
She wrote
veteran.
it down already.
She's all excited about that. I like that. And then,
She likes banners.
then you keep them in
I do.
constant utilization and it's not, and you can
Probably
leave them
pay
up
for
all the
Probably
time.
pay for those banners in 1 or 2 times and moving those poles.
Sure.
Awesome. Well, I think you got some direction. Do we need a motion to, or are you just gonna go get some renderings and some
Yep.
ideas?
Yep.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you very much for discussion, everybody. That was good. Takes us into the next item under Parks Matters, which is Partner Park and the timeline of next steps. Director Vunich.
Again, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I promise Melanie will be presenting the rest of these tonight, so you'll hear my voice for the last time. Again, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the committee, as you know, Partner Park has been a subject of many discussions over the course of the last 7+ months with this particular committee. The intent of those discussions was to create a citizen-based task force or advisory group that would lead the discussion in terms of creating a master plan for the 27 acres. As we found, and I think partially because of the restrictions that are placed on the property, getting volunteers to basically form that task force or advisory committee was very, very difficult. And so recently, the committee endorsed and city council approved engaging a consultant that would assist in the development of the master plan. That consultant's cost was approximately $13,500, but as part of that $13,500, that consultant is preparing a grant application to the Municipal Park Grant Commission for the planning purposes. The consultant, Ken Keitel at TerraSpec, is confident that we'll receive the $10,000 grant and that the cost to the city for his consulting services will be $3,500. Also, the committee's endorsed the gathering of all the information we have for Partner Park. And that includes a lot of topographic information, a lot of land use information, and then just surrounding development patterns, et cetera. And so from the perspective of the city, we do have a great deal of information already in place, and we're taking the steps to bring on professional to help in this process. Tonight, the department is presenting to you a proposal to kind of have a working group that can assist the consultant, city team members bounce ideas off. And that work group is kind of identified as an ad hoc group now. And that would be Councilmember Jaxie, Councilmember Rambo, and if interested, 2 other committee members of their choosing. And that could be from EDC, could be from Admin, Public Works, or this committee. And then a couple of the Historic Preservation Commission members have expressed interest in participating. And I thought that would be a nice addition as well. And so tonight, the department is presenting this kind of revised ad hoc group. And then as part of the memorandum, the department has identified what it would like to basically call the proposed steps in the development of the master plan. And the first would be formalize this ad hoc group by the end of this month. The application for the grant is underway already based upon a conversation I had with Ken Keitel. We've been working on the background materials. So again, we're already in kind of the first 3 steps. And then once we get the grant, we would then step forward and begin all of the steps that follow. Steps 5 through 14, with the goal to have the master plan complete by sometime in February. There is a public engagement component, and that's many of the steps that I've skipped over. But again, we would do initial draft out to the public, out to city council, out to the committees, refine a second draft, again, the process. And we would intend to use the website, survey, social media, and again, with our new communications manager, I think we could do a very good job and obtain a good amount of input. And that's the intent of the process, regardless of who's managing it, is to get public input and buy-in to the master plan. So tonight, there's 2 components, the ad hoc group and the timeline. And if it's acceptable to the committee, we'd like a motion and second endorsement so we can proceed forward.
Okay, awesome. Councilmember Cutchin, did you have your hand up from before or is that? for
No,
this?
this time. So is there gonna be a pavilion or a building? I know we talked about that a long time ago in this park.
That is up to the ad hoc group and ultimately city council.
Thank you.
Anybody else have a motion? We'll start off with. Councilmember Dodwell,
I'll make a motion that we move forward.
okay, Councilmember Rambo, second. All right, so we got a motion to move forward with it with the department and any discussion on the motion?
Doesn't he need?
Uh.
Doesn't he need additional numbers? Recommended or something like that?
Do we have to do that here or is it?
I would assume you'll need to talk amongst yourselves, preferably with Councilmember Jaxi and Councilmember Rambo. If there's
Yeah, pick your crew and.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the motion? All right, seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstention? All right,
Thank you.
good luck. We're looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah.
That takes us right into our next item, which is the wayfinding signs and an update on that from Ms. Ripito.
Thank you, Chair Galani, and members of the committee. I will probably spend quite a bit of time talking on this, and I apologize in advance, but I will try to be brief. Wayfinding signage has been a topic of conversation that has occurred time and time again in the city. The most notable would probably be the Great Streets program, in which wayfinding signage was actually installed. There were only 3 signs that were installed as part of this, which you can see here from the program, the Great Streets program. And this is the sign that you see up here pulling into town center, which is a very attractive sign. And I believe that was 2011, if I'm not mistaken, and they're still in good shape and the city's still receiving quite a few compliments on them. This, of course, triggered looking into it further. And so in 2012, I believe the city conducted a study on further wayfinding signage in the town center area.
So that's a wayfinding sign right there?
Yes, that's a
I
wayfinding.
wanted to know that tonight.
That is it. Yes, it's, I mean, essentially, the whole theory behind wayfinding signage is to get people from one place to another, but it's also to identify the areas along the way so that you know that you're driving through, say, town center on your way to Route 66. Like it's giving a feel to specific areas. And so usually wayfinding signage comes in the form of like a package, you know, several different kinds of complementary signs that go together. And, you know, in Wildwood, we try to keep the signs on public right of way very limited, you know, I mean, even when it comes to business signage, we try and keep it pretty limited. And so therefore, if you are gonna allow signage, having it all as one cohesive program makes it look organized, helps you know where you're at and where you're going. And so that's kind of the theory behind it, which is why Great Streets approached the entirety of like the Manchester corridor and tried to get all of the cities along the way in line and on board with creating different signs that all looked the same, but like different cities had different colors and it kept the street name on there and such. You know, it has certain components of it that are very similar, but differentiate. And so, you know, this triggered the conversation of more wayfinding signage. And so the city conducted a study and these concept signs were developed to kind of complement the existing signage for the wayfinding signs of the Great Streets program. And at this point, it also divided the city into 4 different districts, if you will, just so that typically with wayfinding signage, you want to define an area so that you know that you're in said area, whether you're inside a mall or outside in Forest Park. You know, it's helpful to define areas. And so that's kind of what their thought was here, and having the downtown district, the college, the bridge, the historic, and these signs were complementary to the signs provided by the Great Streets program. So recently, last year, a broker that owns property east of east of East Avenue, you can see this building right here it sits directly behind this building or this shopping center right here. There's a similar problem right next door in which they sit behind there. And so as you can see, any businesses that would be in this, these particular areas definitely have issues being visible from Manchester Road. This isn't a new issue. It's been brought to the city before. But again, the city's sign regulations don't allow for off-site signage. And so, the city has now thought this was, the department thought maybe this was a good time to, revisit the topic of wayfinding signage. And so that's how this conversation came about. And so acknowledging that support historically has not been very high for wayfinding signage, the department brought this back before the Planning and Zoning Commission. And they held a public hearing in November regarding this topic and authorized the department to continue to look into wayfinding signage in hopes of, helping direct people to businesses within Wildwood. So the city again reviewed the past study of wayfinding signs, just in terms of what they found and what they thought would be helpful. And they, the department would note that the city has studied placing signs in right-of-way in town center, but limited these signs to Route 100, as you can see from the Great Streets. So that looking into signs elsewhere is the direction that we were heading. The city had previously engaged the consultant to assist in the design of the signs, which complemented the Great Streets. The Great Streets program did generate interest. These signs, that are located on 100, the city gets a lot of positive feedback, and the locations have been discussed regarding the signs in that were in very specific locations that are major intersections of town center streets. And also that should be noticed, these signs would not be lit at all. That was also important. So that being said, the department took kind of this feedback into consideration and came up with this sign, which is literally the same as the Great Streets wayfinding sign. It's the same type of design, except that the thought process behind it is that it would break down the different districts that were previously discussed. And so it still has Manchester Road on it, but it would break it down as discussed at the previous meeting. The Route 66 district was the area that the committee found it most important to start with, given that, half the conversation started there. In addition to that, what you see before you is also an example of a placemaking banner designed to coordinate with that signage. The color isn't particularly great in here, but it's kind of like a wine color, like a red color, thinking, Route 66 tends to have the black, white, red feel about it. And then also, just a complimentary, simplistic banner that could go up and down Manchester Route 66, which would also help better define Route 66, which we've been trying to kind of give an identity to, but it's been challenging. A lot of people don't even know that it exists in Wildwood, but you drive through Maplewood and you can tell they've got signs all the way down it. This style banner would also enable for specific areas in Route 66 if we wanted to go through and further label like the historic grove or historic pond or something like that to actually let people know that they're in said areas. And so it could better define it that way. And as an example, this also is complementary to the banners that are in Maplewood. And so in my fantasy world, I would love to see all of the cities have Route 66 banners along the way, but they're complementary but unique in their own identity. The banners here also presented with the Wildwood at the bottom of it is also consistent with our our flag banners, the city's flag banners. This might actually say City of Wildwood, and if so, we'll revamp these to say City of Wildwood, but it would give it a consistent theme. And then the theory behind that is that if, we wanted to, and this was just, again, something just thrown together, and again, the color is not awesome, but it's blue. You know, you could do the same theme at the bottom of it, but then have the downtown district banners as well. So that people could use the wayfinding signage put at, you know, the specific locations shown on here. And then they would know when they actually got to said area, or that they were in the downtown or in the, which goes along with the placemaking, creating a vibe, creating a separate space for these different areas, that was discussed at the last meeting. And so, that being said, you know, this is where we're at right now is creating like a pilot program. And so the city thought that we could start with the Route 66, which is essentially the wayfinding sign that would be located at 109 and Manchester Road. And perhaps also include some banners in order to actually let people know where they're at and create that separate district. That being said, the one change that the department would recommend, just based on the thought behind partly the banners, is combining the Bridge District with the Route 66 district, only because you know, I don't think that anybody would know what the Bridge District is unless we.
Confusing.
Right, we made it a thing, you know, and so creating areas or districts, you know, arbitrarily isn't necessarily the best way to handle wayfinding. And not only that, but then it would break up the Route 66 signage, and I feel like you kind of want people to know that they're on Route 66. And so, you know, if the properties that were in the Bridge District along Route 66 were enveloped into that, and then maybe if there are outlying properties, they could be enveloped into the downtown district because they'd be abutting it. And so, yeah, so that would essentially handle all of those. And then, okay, let's see here. Don't want to get ahead of myself. So that being said, also these particular signs could be designed to go along with any of the other signs, like the Celebrate Wildwood. You know, we've had discussions about rebranding it for the 2025 year and, you know, going with a new color scheme. And so therefore we could coordinate like the downtown signage to complement the new 2025 logo and rebranding of Celebrate Wildwood. And, you know, these being blue, those being red would also complement the flag banners. And so it would bring more of a fullness to it, and you could leave these up while the others were. And we could even create some fabulous banners, maybe in a smaller size, for the Village Green empty poles. I'm 100% in favor of that. And so tonight, you know, the department would ask that, you know, for your support in revising the 4 districts to more of 3 districts, which would not affect the sign location, because the locations of the sign, we agree, are good. It would just be 2 Route 66 ones, which is good because it would direct people from both sides to the businesses in that area, which
So
would
what,
hopefully.
what 3
assist.
would it be down to?
Huh?
What 3 would it be down to then?
It would just be the Route 66 one that would be starting with on the pilot program, and then after that, you know, then we would try out the other banners or the other locations and such if
Sorry, I guess I misunderstood.
it.
I thought you said you wanted to narrow this list of 4 down.
Oh, well,
Apologize.
it's 4 signs still, but it's just 3 districts. Just 2 of them would both be the Route 66, and so they would both have the red pointing you in directions, but it would just be coming from both sides as opposed to having the Bridge District at all. And so, that being said, if we move forward with this, next steps that the department would be looking to do would be finding someone to engineer the signs and construct the signs, install them, and then kind of gauge public support from that before moving forward and determine, you know, if there is a need or desire for more signage. And, you know, at that point, you know, there's in looking into wayfinding, there are there are all kinds of different kinds of signs, and we kind of discussed maybe doing like, we have our points of interest map, doing something that's, in specific locations like our park that show the entirety of Wildwood, and then maybe also break down town center or these various areas that they'd be in. And walking radiuses, this is a quarter mile, half mile, or times as to how long it would take. Or potentially, if this isn't helping our current businesses, maybe visit ways of doing that as well. Maybe looking into it further. And with that being said, that concludes the department's presentation. And the department would be happy to answer any questions that you might have regarding the program.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the presentation. That was great.
Yeah.
I know you put a lot of hard
Thanks,
work into
Billy.
that.
Uh,
Grants?
Wasn't this sign prompted by retail? But you're not gonna put the names of the store on the sign, are you?
That was not our goal. So at the
Okay.
last meeting that we discussed, it was, if you listed in the, staff report, it has more vague, terms, retail, grocery, that way, or, historic Grover, historic Pond.
So is that actually gonna help the retail store or not?
Hopefully, I mean, like that.
If somebody's looking for a specific store and they just say, store, I don't.
Yeah, yeah.
And then my other question is, if they closed, is that something you can interchange the signs?
So that I absolutely forgot to mention.
Well, don't worry about that. I just,
Oh, no, because
Yeah.
that is actually something that the department would like to investigate
So-
is.
so what we wanna do is, I think, help our businesses, that the ones that are hidden behind other buildings. I'd be more specific on the sign. I like the signs, but I don't like a whole lot of them, but I like how they're designed. And so I'd be supportive of the sign, at certain locations. I guess you're gonna try the Route 66. But I'd be more concerned about letting the person that's looking for that business know that it's there, because that could be confusing,
So this was part of why it's just a pilot program. It's to
Yeah.
get people towards, the retail, and hopefully businesses can give people directions and say, make a left when you see that sign that. points
Yeah,
in the
the
direction.
buildings that are blocked are the ones we should look at, in my opinion,
Okay.
and try to help them out.
I think part of it is just trying to create a cohesive system.
Yeah,
And I noted in my staff report, but forgot to mention it. I would like to, when we look for somebody to engineer these, is to see if we can get a specific, like maybe some sort of something that holds in the little message boards, like the little panels, maybe screw them in or something like that so that they are changeable, so that perhaps if this is successful and something that is welcomed by the city, that we could look into further helping specific businesses. And maybe there are cities, let's see here, this
yeah,
right here, the Alexandria, for example, they have a program in which cities can actually purchase, like they have specific signs that go along with their wayfinding signage, and that people can purchase a panel. And so I feel like if we were to venture down that road, there would take a lot of investigation and very specific regulations as to which businesses could, and it would have to be based on visibility or something like that. But again, I don't know how welcome that would be in this instance.
So-
so
No,
we
I
would
was,
further
I was gonna
research.
say, couple things. Cause I agree with your point. I think, like for Route 66, for instance, like you've got the retail grocery store. I think the generalization allows people to realize like, hey, I'm going into this district and these things are available. The one concern I have with the removable or changeable to actually put, number one, you're getting into like, for instance, like here in downtown in certain areas, it's gonna be a pretty comprehensive list. You could have 50 things, and you can't just put certain businesses and not the others, because now you're prioritizing. And just because you're behind a building, now we're gonna put you in the center, but the other guy's not. So,
you'd have a
that-
sign, that building would have a sign on it.
yeah, but you still have to go in front of it to see it.
But
I'm just saying, I think there's a lot, in certain areas like town center here in downtown, there's a lot of businesses, but the other concern I have with that is the fact that the rate at which businesses come and go. I mean, I think that's a pretty aggressive, another piece of management to figure out like, how long, so this one business here in the corner, they closed down or they moved, and 4 months later, their name's still over there, and then it becomes counterproductive and people don't pay attention to it. My suggestion was gonna be leave it with these same generalizations because that encompasses the style of businesses that are in the area. And then with the way technology is evolving and what we've done on some of the other signage at the parks, I think, is to put a QR code. And then that QR code can then have a list of all the, if it's retail grocery, that what you would have is, so for, I'm just gonna use Route 66 as an example for now. You would scan the QR code on the Route 66 sign or banner, or whatever it is. And then it would have each one of these things under retail grocery, it would have Deerbergs or, everything that's there. And then that way it would be really easy for the department to manage because it's a matter of just changing it electronically in the system based on business license and things like that. Cause if you've got a business that's there and they haven't applied or gotten their business license, then they probably shouldn't be listed on the city's Wayfair signing, right? And so I think it's a way to manage it more effectively and obviously people that are driving aren't gonna be able to scan a QR code while they're driving, but they're gonna know at least what's in the area that they're driving into, but a lot of people that are walking or biking or hiking, whatever they're doing, everyone's got their phone with them all the time, no matter what they're doing, so they can scan that and then be able to.
Know
So
that
you
they can
search
go
that.
down the street.
And if we
Yeah.
did something
Off of
along the
Manchester.
lines of a further time, like, our points of interest type map or something like that, we could even have QR code for various shopping areas and then have a list or something like that would be.
Yeah,
more
I just
maintainable,
know
but
that with signage,
It's,
personally, it's like, we've got so much on our plate of things to do daily, weekly, monthly for city staff, and I think the worst thing when you do signage like this, if it's not kept up to par and it's 100% accurate, it's counterproductive and it's a waste of money. It's actually worse than not doing anything, in my opinion.
agreed.
Yeah.
Councilmember Rambo?
Yeah, I agree with Jim that this is economic development priority one. Complaint after complaint from failed businesses has been that our signage ordinances are just prohibitively restrictive.
I just
as
got
far as-
that statement on Friday
Yeah,
from
it's
two different
just, it's
businesses
just,
in town.
and we like the aesthetic of no lighted signs, no this, no that and so forth. This is a really good step forward because they're Wildwood style, they're not obtrusive, but and it can help people find things. And if people apply for a new business license, one of the things on our checklist to do is go change the dang sign and we can make them pay for it because they've got more money when they're opening a business than they do when they're closing it down, right? But if we.
That's a good idea,
For an
too.
example, if we had a sign that said feed store, that's a great example of the kind of signage that we were looking for. We need to remove that and replace it with brew pub. And that would help people trying to make it to the new group brew pub. And it doesn't have to say whatever the name of that place is gonna be, but it should be like dog groomer, sweet shop. I think we can find
Ice cream.
names. Yeah,
Ice
right.
cream.
Yeah, I think we
Monster
can
ice
find-
cream place.
Yeah, we can find
Uh-huh.
names
Signs.
and we can keep them current, and we can probably, if one goes out of business, we can keep it and then use it again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think, I really would like to see us open this up to, maybe more rather than less signage, because businesses, we just have a.
They're
dismal-
dying.
Yeah, we,
And we don't have that many businesses anyway.
yeah, well, it's sure
Well,
nice to have some
they're,
though.
we dropped off 5 of them in the last month.
Yeah, the ice cream.
Because nobody
store
can
should
find them.
Closed and.
Or we should have enough signs to support our businesses, whatever that number is.
Pardon me?
I think we should have enough signs that will support our businesses, whatever that number may
Yeah.
be.
Yeah, and they're mostly in town center, so that would be easy.
Here
to
and
kind
over
of-
by the Y.
Yeah, right, but we could relieve the pressure a little bit here by having a larger. More
We can try it
comprehensive
here,
sign in
yeah.
town center and then over by the Y, and then it's just onesie twosies from there on. Do you know what the existing sign cost us roughly? Cause we could go back to the same people and have them do it. You were talking about finding somebody to fabricate the signs and.
Part of the reason for the fabricating signs was just to have those panels like
Oh,
interchangeable,
okay, uh-huh.
so that the city could actually take them out. And we do have a few contractors that we work with that design and or construct signage. And so it seemed worthwhile to check with them to see, you know, if this was possible, you know, and how much it would cost and look into it from a few different directions. But yeah, so the signage that is part of the Great Streets program is not, like, they're just permanent signs, and the panels aren't. And so, yeah, well, like, it was a matter of looking into it to see the best approach. But no, I'm not sure the cost.
Okay, you know,
Right.
Yeah, I mean, as long as it's accurate, you know, if we keep up with it, yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense. Councilmember McCutcheon?
So when did we get a bridge district and what is that?
That is a very good question. The Bridge District was from where Manchester hits 100, and then it comes down to about Taylor Road. And it was kind of an arbitrary district that just looking for something to name that area of, you know, town center, because it wasn't really downtown and it wasn't really our like historic Route 66. And so that's part of the reason
This is for
that
the
I was thinking.
pedestrian bridges that
Is
go
that the
over.
walkway?
Yeah, it does. It has,
Walkway bridge?
yeah. And so because there
Yeah,
are several bridges
street.
there, it's like an identifying factor. However, you know, I feel like it'd be better to have the Route 66 continue all the way up on that, you know, Old Manchester. And, you know, we can incorporate the rest of the handful of buildings into the downtown district. And so I think that creating or making that might add more confusion than.
Well,
So,
and also if we're gonna have a Route 66 district and we're gonna have a bridge district, then we're gonna have to update our town center plan to include those. And when we're talking about putting our signs in the public right of way, we have an ordinance against that. We won't let residents do it, whether it's for garage sales or, you know, something for a school program, candidates, we won't let any resident put anything in the public right of way. So I don't think as a city, we should be putting things in the public right of way. And a business comes into Wildwood, they should be looking up the sign ordinance and know they can't, what they can and can't do. If they choose to have a building that's behind a building, they made that choice. And they get, I think it is 2 signs anyway for the building. So, you know, this is Wildwood. We're not supposed to be cluttered with signs. I get a lot of complaints, and it's not just my ward, about the current signs that we have. So you know, we also have to change our sign ordinance as well. And somebody else said businesses move in and out. And a lot of the things that you have listed under each district is repetitive. I mean, why would we want to do that? You know, I hear you all, and it says it benefits the businesses. But the city of Wildwood is all about residents. It's not about businesses. This is a bedroom community. This is not an economic development center. That's not what the purpose of Wildwood was or is. I just, you know, we have a lot of street signs already, in addition to wayfinding signs, and then the funding, you know, what's all this going to cost, and can't we better spend it somewhere else? I really am not in favor of this at all.
Go ahead, Ms. Rivito.
If I might, and like I can respond to a couple of those things, just as far as signage in the right of way. Our sign regulations would probably need to be revisited accordingly, if this is the direction we went with. However, when it comes to directional signage, it's my understanding that that's allowed in the right of way, as our sign regulations stand, and this would be considered directional signage. Like, we would have to discuss with our Public Works Department and or, you know, maybe MoDOT or St. Louis County, depending on, but that's, you know, something that we would address, and we would, you know, safety is our #1 priority. Shortly, you know, followed by not cluttering up our right of ways with signage, which is kind of part of the reason for this, is to have a cohesive, consistent signage program with minimal signage, just to get people headed in the right direction. And then as to the question about them being repetitive, it's basically because you're coming at things from different directions. And so therefore, you know, the sign might be pointing towards grocery retail, but it's coming from this direction, whereas that sign is pointing at, you know, grocery retail, but it's from the opposite direction. And so therefore there is some necessity and also, you know, positive benefits to the repetitive signage so that people know they're heading in the right direction.
Well, we have GPS now in Waze, and if somebody's looking for a business, all they have to do is put it in their own wayfinding system to find those businesses. So why do we need a bunch of signs all over Wildwood? You know, with basically the same repetitive information. I mean, all they have to do is put Deerbergs in there and then it'll tell them how to get to Deerbergs. If they're looking for Route 66, you know, they can plug something in and they can find it. I mean, if the only thing that I can think of that I think and the residents that I hear from might be okay is the Route 66 sign. But I honestly do not think, and I can tell you the one from 100 down to 109, you're going to get major complaints. I know that for 100%, you know, a fact. You know, maybe if you put some kind of directional sign, base, whatever, in the community, in the village green, like they were saying, and put, you know, QR codes next to it where you could see the map of the whole city. That's one thing, but then putting, you know, signs all through the city that basically say the same thing. I don't think that, one, the residents are going to be happy with it. And two, again, it's the funding. You know, there are a lot of other projects that need to be funded.
Director Vunich?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I apologize to Melanie, just a couple points. She mentioned, and it's in the memorandum, that in 2012, we did go through a process of looking at wayfinding signs. Ultimately, the city council decided that it wasn't something they felt was appropriate. Based upon the complaints that we've received from certain businesses because of visibility from the primary arterial corridors, we brought this back. And ultimately, as Ms. McCutcheon described, there were differing opinions. That's why we went with the pilot program, to do a few signs on a selected corridor. The selected corridor per city council is Route 66, to see if it actually would work, be successful for the businesses, and how best to implement it. It's a pilot program. So your concerns, Ms. McCutcheon, have been heard. I think that's why we wanted to start kind of small and see if we were successful.
Yeah, thank you, Director Vunich. Yeah, you know, my opinion on it as well is that all four of these areas, I know the pilot area is Route 66, but all four of the areas that we're talking about for this wayfinding signage are in town center. So we're not talking about traversing the entirety of the city, and it is the economic center. And I know it's a conversation that we continuously seemingly go in circles around within council is we want businesses, we want restaurants, we want all of these things, but we don't want any development. We don't want to do anything that attracts that. And when we come out and say, and with all due respect, Councilmember McCutcheon, but if we say, hey, if you put a business over here in this corner, tough, we don't care if you survive or not. I think that's basically telling businesses don't come to Wildwood. And you can't say it's a bedroom community and we don't want economic development, because if you don't have businesses, you don't have a city. And we'll be dead in 10 years if we move forward with that mindset, in my opinion, that is. So I think this is just a minor thing we can do to help facilitate engagement, interaction. And, you know, we do the concerts here, we do the Celebrate Wildwood, we do all these things because we're trying to develop a community, and people want amenities. I mean, I can tell you right now that I talk to way more people that wish there was a Target in Wildwood, and there's not gonna be one anytime soon. We all know that. But
About it.
Always wish.
I can tell you right now that if you polled, in my opinion, if you polled all the residents of Wildwood, the overwhelming majority would wish we had more economic epicenter and more things going on, and all of the stores in town center filled with restaurants and stuff. And so it frustrates me a lot when I hear like these back and forth things, because we say we want this, we say we want that, but we don't want this, we don't want that. So you can't have your cake and eat it too. I mean, and we only have, I brought this up a million times in council, and you know, only 2% of the entire city is zoned for high density development when it comes to development of homes and everything, but yet we still have major pushback anytime we entertain a small development of 15, 20, 30, how many homes or whatever in this tiny area. And I commend all these businesses that are continuing to come into our city, even in light of the massive hardship they're walking into, because it's not Ellisville, it's not Chesterfield, it's not Eureka. You open a business in Wildwood, and if you're a front-facing business that survives on walk-in traffic, you're gonna struggle a lot more in Wildwood than you are in any of our neighboring communities, and that's a fact. And so those that are succeeding, it's because of their perseverance and their hard work. And this is just some small token of gesture that the city can do to help facilitate their success and help the rest of the residents know what's there and how to engage with those particular businesses. So I just, like I said, at some point, we just have to, you know, embrace what it is we are trying to do, and you know, because I can tell you the residents that live in this city, they want to be able to go to the store in the city or go eat in the city. I know my family and I would much rather go down the street 5 minutes away than drive 25 minutes to Chesterfield or the Valley to get something to eat. Councilmember Kranz?
We're gonna need a sign for an ATM machine here pretty soon because Bank of America is leaving. So I now have to go to Ellisville.
Yeah.
But anyway, I agree.
You use cash.
Well,
I do for my golf.
Councilmember McCutcheon?
yeah, I was not saying, you know, I hear all the time that we need family-friendly businesses in the city of Wildwood. And actually, the town center area is not just the center around Deerbergs. You know, it stretches across the city. I'm not saying we don't need to have, you know, businesses in Wildwood. What I'm saying is we have ordinances and we have them for a reason. And they were part of our original master plan. And I think we really should stick to our master plan, because that's one reason the city was developed, is because there were things happening to landscape and stormwater management that we thought we could manage better. I'm not saying we shouldn't have any businesses. I think we should have more family-friendly businesses. But what I'm saying is this community was designed to be a bedroom community. And when I moved out here in '96, I had to drive to Baldwin to the grocery store. You know, that really didn't bother me. But what you did say, which I think is very pertinent, is we're close to Ellisville, we're close to Baldwin, we're close to Eureka, and we're close to Chesterfield. And that's, you know, that's where our residents go to shop. And it could be all kinds of reasons. It could be because of what we have here or what we don't have. But I'm sorry, when you know the ordinance, whatever it may be, and then you move in the city and you want an exception, we keep giving all these exceptions, and we're not truly Wildwood anymore. We're a city of exceptions. That's
Councilmember
just
Dodwell?
Ms. McCutcheon, I understand what you're saying to some extent. However, we had citizens of this community, several of which were founding members of this community, that helped put together the town center concept and plan. And so I agree wholeheartedly with Mr. Galani in the fact that we need to give these businesses the ability to tell people they are there. I don't care what kind of business it is, they still need to be able to tell the community they are there. Granted, there are things that allow you to find locations on your own phone, on your own device. But I want the city of Wildwood to be able to have its areas clearly defined to people who come and visit, to our residents who may not know that there are certain businesses in certain places, or certain amenities, parks. You'd be amazed at the number of people in Wildwood that don't even go up and down some of our streets, that don't even know that some things are here that they could enjoy, that they don't have to go to another entity where we have to share tax funds from, when they could come here and we could keep the tax funds. So I think we need to try this out, see what it looks like. Make sure that we get feedback from the businesses along that way. As Mr. Rambo stated, I went into 2 different businesses since last Thursday. And one of them, I asked, why don't you come to the economic development meeting on Tuesday night? They're like, what good does that do? Woodlawn or Wildwood's doing nothing to help my business. So we need to be able to support these individuals, whether you think they made a choice or not. We have residents who want their services, who need their services. And I think that as a city grows, if the city wants to maintain itself, it has to have some type of town center that is thriving and living and encouraging its residents to come here and shop, to come here and eat, to come here and do business with another business person versus driving into another location and spending their tax dollars there. Sorry.
Thank you.
Well, can I say one more thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
We don't keep the tax dollars, it's a pool tax. So it's distributed throughout the Group B. So just because somebody shops in Wildwood, we don't retain all the tax portion of that.
I understand every city in St. Louis County doesn't retain all of their funding.
That's not what I heard you
percentage of it.
say, but everybody's entitled to their opinion. I'm going by what I hear from a lot of people. And if we're not gonna uphold our sign ordinance, if we're gonna keep giving out exceptions, then why do we have one? I mean, you're gonna have a building, whether they're behind another building or not. I believe they get 2 signs each. And I don't mean to be insulting here, but we have very intelligent residents who are aware of what's here. We have a website that tells you what's in Wildwood. I think we used to even have a park guide. I don't know if we still have that or not. I just know that, okay, if we're going to go down this direction, then we have a lot of major plans that we have used from the get-go that needs to be changed. We can't have it on paper one way and then turn around and go, oh no, we're going to give you an exception. You can have 3 signs.
Yeah,
Same.
we'll have to address, so I got Councilmember Mabry that's been waiting. Councilmember Mabry?
I've got 2 questions, and then if no other questions, whoever else has a question or not can let me know. The 2 questions, and then I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
If no other questions. For Ms. Ripito and for Director Konich, can pilot 1 area for what I think is 2 banks of signs for Route 66 be further explored and assembled a template for presentation and conform to existing ordinance for signage? Those constraints can a pilot for approval by our objection by council be developed for this this number 1 thing, Route 66. Second question is, what is this 3rd sign, 2nd district? I've heard of the 4th sign in the 4th district called Bridge location. What's the 3rd sign in 2nd district?
Okay, so, to your first question, yes, that was kind of our goal, was to kind of bring this all together, have the sign, designed, engineered, find somebody that could construct it. And yes, so the first sign would be going in what was previously known as the Route 66 district, which would be at 109 in Manchester. And then if also approved with that, we could do the banners along Route 66. So that would essentially be the first step in the pilot program.
So one big sign somewhere, 109 and Old Manchester, that's a
Yes.
a bank sign, a sign bank. It doesn't say Deerbergs, it doesn't say Joe's Horseshoe Palace. It says food and it says equine.
So what we have proposed right now is, retail grocery store pointing, that direction, so that it would get you over into the businesses on Route 66. Then the community college, YMCA, heading south on 109, and then the historic pond and historic Grover. And then depending on how many, we could fit on there might be another one for historic sites or something like that. But like those four are the ones that, the city found to be important. So it points you in general directions of either sites or
Still
retail.
one stanchion.
Just one stand.
100,
Yes,
Old Manchester, and it's got 4 arrows pointing off to 4 places.
correct.
I'm just being
4 or
really,
5.
really, high elevation, just trying to get the concept. Okay, now the second sign is not a sign, it's a whole bunch of banners down Old 100 coming up to the Route 66 days in a year or two or something. So,
Correct. So
That's concept phase 1, big stanchion with 4 arrows going off saying food, scenery, something else, Old
Right.
Pond, Old Grover type stuff. A whole bunch of banners waving for people to drive down this old Manchester Road. And then what's this place that's the next area that's not called the bridge area?
So that would be embellished in Route 66 as well. And so that sign could go up, it was just that, we were determining
There's 2
one
big
area.
stanchions.
So that one would, yes, be the other end of Route 66, like old Route 66. And so,
Where it runs west and dead ends out at 100 or back east.
The bridge district's east.
yeah,
bridge
so
district
east, yeah, so what was
Okay.
formerly known as the Bridge District.
So part of what I guess we'll try to gel something this evening would be, do we have to include this bridge district as a bridge district, or can it now become reabsorbed simply tonight and become the second sign for concept 1?
That was my suggestion,
Yeah.
is to eliminate the Bridge
Earlier,
District
I'm-
altogether and absorb it into Route 66 so that you just
Now,
got one
and what we-
cohesive.
And what we
Yes.
just talked about with food over here, fix your horse over here, Old Pond over here, Old Grover over there. Can that all be performed with these signs we saw? in
The
pretty
panels.
bronze, whatever, and all that be done with the current ordinance as a template and not have Deerberg or Schnucks or Cattle Call or any specific restaurant name.
Correct, the
That could be
signage
announced.
is, like directional signage is allowed in the public right of way. And again, we would discuss it with Public Works.
So the motion would be to proceed in that vein because it doesn't violate existing ordinance, neither in letter or spirit. But it does allow us to measure the performance of phase 1, concept 1.
That is correct.
All right, well,
Make that motion?
I would make that motion as complicated as I've tried to make it sound.
All right, do we have a second, Councilor Rambo?
Sure.
All right, any further discussion on said motion? All right, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed.
Councilmember McCutcheon's opposed. Any abstentions? All right, well, we'll look forward to seeing that move forward then. Thank you very much for the presentation and the discussion, everybody. All right, now we are within 5 minutes of our time limit. So we're gonna get to our final item
2.5
under
minutes.
Parks and Matters, which is the Village Green update on the project. Director Vunich.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, department has prepared you for your consideration the monthly update relating to Village Green Phase 1. The new addition to this particular report is the change order table. I think that's going to be beneficial as we proceed forward. All of these have been approved by city council via the committee, but I just think it's nice to have them all in one place so you can see what we're doing. If there are any questions regarding any of the items, the department would be glad to answer them at this time.
Anybody have any questions? Councilmember Dodwell?
No questions. I wanted to compliment you on putting together the change order summary so we can keep track of what's going on. One thing I might ask you to add in there is a due date or, you know, like when is the delivery, if it's purchase equipment, or where does it fit in the project timeline? I'm just trying to make sure we include that.
Glad to do that. Nice suggestion. Thank you.
A lot of work, yeah.
Cool. Anybody else?
It's like Bim's puppy.
Comments? Okay. Thank you very much, Director Vunish. It's exciting to see all the work being done over there, and saw the big pits the other day and now they're covered up. So that's pretty cool. So, but that-
Actually, they brought in 2 larger pieces of equipment today. They're really gonna start getting after it tomorrow.
Did you save that, all that, milkweed on purpose? The milkweed, did you save all the milkweed on purpose?
As best we could.
Good, yeah, good, wonderful, yeah, you laugh.
We need it.
Awesome.
There's
Well,
some, there's guys there and they're gonna.
Yeah. Thank you for it's good to see it coming along, so that's awesome. Thanks for the update. That takes us into the last 2 items under Park Matters, which is the Wilder Recreation Programming, an update on current future offerings and facility reservations, event registrations, and ongoing long-term maintenance costs for parks and trail facilities. Does anybody have any questions, comments, or concerns related to anything within those items? All right, seeing none, that we don't have an executive session and not ready for action. Just 5 items under planning matters. There's no other items for consideration, which brings us to our next meeting, which is Tuesday, September 17th, 2024. And outside of that, does anybody have anything miscellaneous? All right, Councilmember Dodwell.
We are continuing ahead with the 5:30 start time. For
Yeah,
the rest of the year. Okay, I
Yeah.
just wanted to make sure I was.
as long as everybody's okay with that, no major objection
I will be gone on my vacation.
on 17th. Okay,
Other
awesome.
countries.
No, thanks for letting us know. Well, thank you very much, guys, everyone, for the participation, the dialogue, the engagement. It's always great to have a conversation here, and appreciate you guys being accommodating with the last couple months and the change of dates for the meeting, and as well as the time, and hopefully it allows everyone to get home to their families earlier. And or if you're binge watching Netflix or whatever it is that's happening. Anyway, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Councilmember Kranz, second by Councilmember Preston. No discussion on the motion. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?